Hey guys, I wanted to jump on here and talk to you today about why I'm vegan and what decisions that I made in my life which have led me to being vegan. Mine is like, I went vegetarian first and then I went vegan eventually once I learned about the dairy and egg industry. But learning about these systems was really important because it opened my eyes to the injustice of what was happening. And that was what really changed my mind, was because I was always against injustice in every form, and I always took it to heart. Like when I saw injustice throughout my life, this is when I was very young, I always felt a sense of extreme anger and betrayal. Like it hurt my heart, and I was extremely, like, my eyes would usually sting with tears, and it was like an anger, like something needs to be done about this type feeling. But then I learned later that there were certain issues that had multiple sides to them, and when I started taking positions and taking sides in things, I would later learn in life that what I thought was true ended up being something completely different. And I'm kind of referring to, in the case of politics, where I used to take one side until learning and really seeing the truth that there are not two parties. There's just one party. They're funded by the same people and really have the same issues, and it's all part of the same rotten system. And so it took time, and me growing up through adolescence and becoming, in college, obviously my mind grew, intellectually I grew, but this was a process. It took many years, and everybody has their own journey, and I'm trying to reach the vegans out there who may have been vegan once, or who it's been coming up in your mind, you've been thinking about it, and I really want to be there to explain kind of what I went through, because maybe you can relate in some way. I remember I first heard about being vegan. I do remember Ellen DeGeneres being vegan, and I remember her, because I'd watch her show sometimes. I wasn't like a huge fan, but I'd watch it, and I just was always drawn to veganism and vegetarianism. I always thought it was like a moral and ethical way to live, and I always thought it was that you could somehow attain better health and to meet a higher version of yourself spiritually by becoming vegan and vegetarian. I always had those feelings and thoughts throughout my life. I also wasn't a very big meat eater. There were times in my life where I was, but overall, especially when I was very young, I wasn't a very big meat person. In fact, when I was a child, I often remember being forced to sit at the table until I finished my meat. I would always eat the sides, the vegetables and the rice and things like that, but I would really pick at the meat, and I would always think it was gross. But later on in life, as I was in college and as I was learning these types of things, and I watched Ellen, and she said to watch this documentary. I don't know if she mentioned it or something like that. It's called EARTHLINGS. And I watched this documentary called EARTHLINGS, and I remember that like completely the film shattered my perception and belief of what I thought the world was up until that moment. And it caused me to question these systems that we have in our lives, the systems that we live in, that exist on this planet and in our society. And I had to examine them and examine my own beliefs around them and examine how I was participating and perpetuating these systems. And so I was forced to come to terms with that, and I really had a hard time with it. It was really quite clear to me, actually, that consuming animal products was wrong, but I only made maybe half a step, if you want to even call it that, and I became vegetarian at age 18. So I stopped eating meat at age 18. I'm 34 now, and I'm fully vegan now. I've been fully vegan for almost 5 years. But it took me so much time in between, to learn about the dairy and egg industry as well. But anyway, I went vegetarian immediately. I don't remember how long it was after I watched the film, but it was shortly after I watched it. And I did watch it several times to gain to see things that maybe I didn't see the first time, and to learn more, to see more. I just remember feeling very sad. And I remember feeling, the film revealed and showed to me how we may not actually be as important as we think we are. and that maybe possibly we were put here to live side by side and coincide with animals, and that maybe how do we know for sure that we're God's favorite? You know, it could be the animals. We're supposed to be taking care of them, looking after them. But the film examines the way in which we exploit animals in all the various ways that we do it. And it was just so full circle, and it covered so many different areas that I was really impressed with how well the documentary was how well the documentary was done. There were moments in the documentary that were extremely difficult to watch, but that are needed to be watched and needed to be seen by human eyes. And I see why now, why that's so important. But I also remember for myself how convicted I was and how I felt. And I remember that the choice was not hard for me. But when I started communicating this feeling and what I saw and what I felt to others, especially my friends, the ones closest to me, my family, I was met with extreme resistance and questions, and I was met with misunderstanding, not understanding. I was met with anger and ridicule. And so all of these things really kind of pushed me into a shell, because I didn't really, even though I understood what was going on internally, I didn't develop the language to be able to speak eloquently or well about it, or in a way in which other people could understand what I saw and what the reality of the situation is for the animals and the victims in the situation. So it took me many years to develop the language. And even when I started to develop the language, I didn't practice it. And so it's a long process. You know, so I didn't start practicing it, and I kept bottling it up. And now it feels like I will explode if I don't start speaking about this, because the injustice is for them, for the animals. I cannot imagine what they must be going through. The ones who have already been abused, slaughtered, killed, and the ones who are locked in there right now. It's on such a mass scale that it can be easily compared to the Holocaust. And in fact, this is a much larger size-wise than the Holocaust, because this occurs on a much larger scale to many more animals every single day. And this is happening behind closed windows, behind closed doors, and we're sold a fairy tale and a lie to convince us to keep supporting this type of system and to keep enslaving these animals and to keep murdering them and slaughtering them and consuming their body parts. And we're told straight up lies, and we're told that we need protein from animals to survive and to thrive, and that we need to consume milk for strong bones. And all of these types of statements and ideas have been disproven over and over again by science. And so I'm just another voice that's trying to bring voice to this and encouraging you to look this up, because the information's there. But I see now there has to be people to point others in that direction so that they can be open to receiving it and can then do their own research and find out the truth themselves. But there have to be messengers of truth in this movement for change and for peace. And so being vegan is just about peace. It's about living in a way that's with compassion for all living beings, and not supporting practices and industries that exploit animals in all of its forms: entertainment, leather, food, clothing, all the ways in which we exploit animals. And there is no shortage of ways in which we exploit animals. It is pretty sad how much we do that. But basically, I kind of want to give you an analogy of why I think that the injustice struck at my heart so much, and why it should yours as well too, is because if you look at the U.S. criminal justice system, I don't think there are many people today who actually believe that our criminal justice system here in the United States is actually a just criminal justice system, as the name would sort of try to make you believe it would imply. That in fact, is a corrupt and very unjust system. And why is that? Because it disproportionately affects and targets certain groups of people over other groups of people. Blacks, for example, are incarcerated black men are at much higher levels and rates than are white men, and the penalties and fines are often more hefty for African Americans than they are white Americans. Obviously, there was an active drug war in this country, which specifically targeted certain types of drugs in certain types of communities. And so, all you have to do is to look into it and to be a reasonably intelligent person to know that these things exist. And I don't think there are many, I don't think there are many people who agree with the way that our criminal justice system is. I think that most people believe it needs to be reformed in some type of way. And also, in the case of marijuana, why are we taking people's rights away and locking them in prison and jail for many, many years for having like this much marijuana on them? And the laws are completely convoluted. And in the case of Big Pharma and these pharmaceutical companies who market and sell drugs that are extremely highly addictive, that have caused death and addictions and have destroyed and devastated entire swaths of communities in this country, that is legal. But a person on their own having a small bit of marijuana can be arrested for and put in jail for many, many years. It is complete hypocrisy. It doesn't make sense. And this is the same hypocrisy that exists in the animal industry as well too. And I noticed that and I recognized that when I saw it for what it was. When I saw the truth with my own eyes, I saw it for what it was. And there's no denying it. People make excuses, but there's no denying the truth and the reality of the situation. And you could say, oh, well, grass-fed and humane and all these labels that actually don't mean anything, because the animals are, in those types of situations, the animals are often there might be parts of their lives that they're allowed to be free range, for example, but aren't required to be for that certification level the entire duration of their lives. So they might get a small amount of time on some grass. But what's worse, allowing animal to be free and then slicing its head off and then chopping its beak off and then ripping its horns off, cutting its tail off, locking it in a cage for its entire life, taking its babies away from them. What's worse, doing that from the get-go or allowing the animals some sort of freedom and then doing it to them anyway? So those bullshit labels are just there as a marketing to convince you to buy their product, that the animals that you're consuming were treated well, had a good life. Nothing's further from the truth. And it's a justification that will enable you in your mind to convince yourself that it's okay to consume this animal. So that's my thoughts on that and the injustice of it, and what I saw when I looked at other injustices, which I gave you an example of the U.S. criminal justice system when it comes to incarcerating certain types of people, and then also in regards to marijuana versus opioid drugs like OxyContin. And so the hypocrisy was just, for me, when I see hypocrisy, and I've seen it in myself before in the past, and I see it sometimes in me. And it drives me completely crazy because I don't like hypocrisy, and I try my best to live by my values and to be a living example for all people, because I want to live my life by values and in such a way that inspires other people to want to live this way as well too. So you got to practice what you preach. Obviously I think I'll just leave it there. So those are the reasons. That's like the predominant main reason why. There are obviously health reasons, environmental reasons, and spiritual reasons that I've also chosen to take the next step and to go fully vegan. But I believe that all of those benefits come anyway from living in a way where you're aligned with your values, and that you've created a moral guide, a moral compass for your life, but you're actually living and practicing your life in line with those values, and that you're not living a life of hypocrisy and lies and feeling like you need to justify your actions by making excuses or lying. And so that's kind of what ends up happening, and it's a beautiful thing to actually do that. And you can actually experience this by going vegan. You can experience living in a way. You can live your life completely the way you're living it and choose not to harm, consume animals, and support the practices of the animal industries. And you can live your life by these values in an ethical and moral way. And it just feels really wonderful. And you will experience health benefits. You will learn and realize about the environmental impacts and benefits of you going vegan, and also, I believe, spiritual benefits as well too. That's each person's individual journey, but those come anyway. So go vegan. I hope you got a lot from this video. I just had to get it out. I just had to post it, so I'm just gonna stop talking. All right. See you for the next one. Thanks for watching.